How do you build the first superpower in human history? Today, we think of global powers like the United States or China, nations with vast territory, huge populations, and influence across continents. But more than 2,500 years ago, long before modern nations existed, one empire achieved something astonishing. Today, in this video, we explore how the Persian Empire rose from a small kingdom to rule from Egypt to India and govern nearly half of the world's population. To understand how Persia rose to such dominance, we must begin in the 6th century BCE. At that time, the Middle East was already filled with powerful civilizations. Egypt had monumental temples and pyramids that had stood for centuries. Babylon was a center of science and astronomy. The Greek world was beginning to develop philosophy and early forms of democracy. Yet these civilizations had one thing in common. They were regional powers. They controlled territories along rivers, coastlines, or clusters of cities, but none had yet managed to build a truly global empire. This raises an important question. How could one ruler possibly control dozens of cultures spread across thousands of miles? Without modern communication, without advanced transportation, and without a unified political system, governing such a vast territory seemed nearly impossible. The civilization that solved this problem would become the first great superpower of the ancient world. That civilization emerged from the rugged lands of Persia. Around 550 BCE, a Persian ruler named Cyrus II, later known as Cyrus the Great, rose to power and changed history forever. At the time, Persia was not the dominant force in the region. Instead, the Persians were subjects of the Median Empire. But Cyrus led a rebellion that defeated the Medes and united both peoples under his rule. This victory created a new kingdom with the potential to expand beyond its borders. Cyrus quickly proved that he was not interested in ruling only a small territory. His ambitions were far larger. Within a few years, he launched military campaigns that transformed Persia into a rapidly growing empire. One of his first major targets was the wealthy kingdom of Lydia in western Anatolia. Lydia controlled important trade routes and possessed enormous wealth. After defeating the Lydian king Croesus, Cyrus gained access to resources that strengthened Persian power even further. Yet Cyrus's most famous victory came in 539 BCE, when his army marched toward the great city of Babylon. Babylon was one of the most magnificent cities of the ancient world. Its towering walls, temples, and gardens symbolized centuries of power and culture. Many expected a brutal siege. Instead, Cyrus captured the city with remarkable speed and surprisingly little destruction. Here, Cyrus revealed the leadership strategy that would make Persia unique. Rather than ruling conquered territories through terror, he adopted a policy of tolerance. Local populations were allowed to keep their religions, customs, and traditions. According to historical records, Cyrus even allowed displaced communities to return to their homelands and rebuild their sacred city. For the Jewish population exiled in Babylon decades earlier, this meant the opportunity to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their sacred city. This approach may seem obvious today, but in the ancient world it was revolutionary. Many earlier empires had ruled through fear and destruction. Cyrus realized that stability could be achieved in a different way. By respecting local cultures and allowing communities to maintain their identities, he reduced the chances of rebellion. His message was simple: obey the empire, pay tribute, and live in peace. This strategy allowed the Persian Empire to expand rapidly without constant uprisings. But conquering territory was only the beginning. The real challenge was governing it. That challenge fell to one of Persia's most important rulers, Darius I. When Darius came to power in 522 BCE, the empire stretched across a vast region from Central Asia to the Mediterranean. Managing such a huge territory required a new approach to government. Darius transformed the Persian state into one of the most organized political systems the ancient world had ever seen. One of his first reforms was to divide the empire into provinces known as satrapies. Each satrapy was governed by an official called a satrap who managed local administration and tax collection. However, Darius understood that powerful governors could become dangerous if they gained too much independence. To prevent corruption or rebellion, he created a system of oversight. Military commanders reported directly to the king, while royal inspectors traveled throughout the empire conducting surprise investigations. This system ensured that provincial leaders remained loyal to the central government. It also created an administrative structure that allowed the empire to function smoothly across enormous distances. But even the most efficient government requires communication. Without reliable transportation, information travels slowly and authority weakens. Darius solved this problem with one of the greatest infrastructure projects of the ancient world, the Royal Road. Stretching roughly 2,500 kilometers from the Persian capital of Susa to the city of Sardis near the Aegean Sea, the Royal Road connected the empire from east to west. Along this route, relay stations provided fresh horses for royal messengers. These couriers could travel across the empire in about a week, an astonishing speed for the ancient world. Orders from the king could reach distant provinces quickly, and news from across the empire could return just as fast. The road also encouraged trade and economic growth. Merchants could move goods safely across vast distances, connecting markets from Egypt to Central Asia. To support this growing economy, Darius introduced standardized currency, including the famous gold daric. With common coins accepted throughout the empire, trade became easier and more efficient. These innovations transformed Persia into a powerful economic network. At its height, the empire ruled roughly 40% of the world's population. Cities prospered, trade routes flourished, and the Persian state became one of the most powerful political systems of the ancient world. Yet even the greatest empires eventually faced challenges. For Persia, one of the most famous conflicts occurred on its western frontier with the Greek city-states. Around 400 BCE, Greek communities in the region of Ionia rebelled against Persian rule. Athens supported the revolt, provoking a conflict that would become known as the Greco-Persian Wars. The war produced several legendary battles. In 490 BCE, Persian forces attempted to punish Athens for its involvement in the rebellion. At the Battle of Marathon, however, the Athenians defeated the invading army. The victory became one of the most famous events in Greek history. A decade later, the Persian king Xerxes launched a massive invasion of Greece. His army was enormous by ancient standards and crossed into Europe determined to bring the Greek city-states under Persian control. The campaign included the dramatic Battle of Thermopylae, where a small Greek force led by Spartan king Leonidas resisted the Persian army before being overwhelmed. Later, the Greeks achieved a major naval victory at the Battle of Salamis. These events are often remembered as heroic moments in Greek history. Yet despite these setbacks, Persia remained a powerful empire for many decades afterward. Over time, however, internal challenges began to weaken Persian authority. Provincial governors gained greater independence, and political rivalries within the royal court created instability. By the 4th century BCE, the empire still appeared impressive from the outside, but its internal unity had begun to decline. This weakness created an opportunity from a rising power from the west. In 334 BCE, a young Macedonian king named Alexander launched an invasion of the Persian Empire. Though Persia was vastly larger, Alexander proved to be a brilliant strategist. His victories at Granicus, Issus, and Gaugamela shattered Persian resistance. Within a few years, Alexander captured the Persian capitals, including the magnificent ceremonial city of Persepolis. The last Persian king, Darius III, was eventually killed while fleeing the advancing Macedonian forces. After more than 2 centuries of dominance, the Achaemenid Persian Empire came to an end. Yet Alexander's conquest revealed an important truth. Instead of destroying Persian institutions, he adopted many of them. He kept the satrapy system, used Persian administrators, and adopted elements of Persian royal ceremony. Alexander understood that the Persians had already developed an effective system for ruling vast territories. This was perhaps Persia's greatest legacy. Its ideas about administration, infrastructure, and governance influenced later empires across Eurasia. From Roman provincial systems to later imperial administrations, many rulers faced the same challenge that Persia had solved centuries earlier. The Persian Empire showed that true power does not come only from military conquest. It comes from organization, communication, and the ability to govern diverse societies across enormous distances. In that sense, Persia was not just an empire, it was the first blueprint for global power. If you enjoyed learning how the Persian Empire became the first superpower of the ancient world, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more documentaries exploring ancient wars, civilizations, and the discoveries that shaped our world.